Hello and welcome back to the Karma Stories podcast. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today I have 5 stories for you from the Malicious Compliance subreddit. You can get the Karma Stories podcast on every major podcasting platform, and we also post on YouTube where you can read along with the stories under the @Karma Stories podcast handle. Alright, on to today's stories, let's jump right in. This story comes to us from Bill0341. You can march a Lance Corporal to the Chow Hall, but you can't make him eat. Was in the Marines in 1987, stationed at MCAS Kaneohe on Oahu. Beautiful place to live. Horribly expensive to do much of anything off base due to prices. We lived in a squad bay literally across the street from the base Burger King. Always been a fan of their product, what can I say? Our battalion's Chow Hall was a 10-minute walk from the barracks I stayed in. The closest barracks to the Chow Hall was 7 to 8 minutes walk. The Chow Hall was named Anderson Hall, named for a Navy Cross recipient if memory serves, and it was a crap hole, even by 1980s Marine infantry standards. Think Biloxi Blues Chow Hall scene style. All the tables and chairs were broken or lopsided, no condiments, bland, over or undercooked. You get whatever they have, screw you, deal with it, you're in the infantry, or don't eat. Some of you know this feeling. If you don't know, if you are in the US military service, chow is part of the compensation you get. They don't say what, how much, or how often, but it's part of the deal. If you were not in your area at chow time and, say, ended up at the Air Wing Chow Hall, you, with your Chow Hall card, could eat there instead. They won't turn you down because you are at the wrong Chow Hall, but they definitely keep track of that. Since the long walk compared to Burger King in the hot, humid Hawaiian sun to the aforementioned crap hole on my time was not appealing to me, I would go to the Burger King lounge a couple lunches a week, along with lots of other Lance Corporals from my unit, as well as others that ate at Anderson Hall. The Burger King got busy, but they would do their thing and life was as okay as it gets for a Lance Corporal in the Marine Infantry, not out in the field. The Air Wing Chow Hall got a lot of repeat business as well. Apparently, the battalion commander, through the mess hall officer, got wind of this, probably due to the large number of meals being prepared and not eaten on a daily basis. Also, the other chow halls probably were bitching about all the extra meals they had to prepare for irritated Marines who don't belong in their decent, well-maintained chow hall where there are options and politeness and seconds and edible food. I can say this with confidence because orders got issued and everyone who had a Chow Hall card and could eat for free was to line up at their respective barracks 3 times a day, have a head count to make sure that nobody was missing, and then march to the Anderson Hall for their meal. Being the good Marines that we were, we submitted to this latest assault on common decency with all the grace you would expect from pissed off infantry grunts. There are several types of unit movements in the Marines, route step being one. Route step is a very casual unit march where you can be casual about the movement, talking is permitted, etc. Day 1, we went to the Chow Hall route step. Bitch all the way there until we dismissed from formation to go eat. Once dismissed, fully 2/3 of us walked away without setting a foot in the Chow Hall. Repeat several times a day for several days. The poor NCO who would be forced to route step us down there got so tired of the bitching about bad chow and life in the infantry in general, we ended up marching to the Chow Hall. Imagine movie parade unit movement, everyone in step, facing forward, looking good, and most definitely no bitching. To make his life just a little less worse for having drawn the short straw and assigned to this task. Initially, if we were off on the weekend, we wouldn't have to march to the Chow Hall. This lasted 1 weekend. Second weekend, if you were found in the barracks at chow time, in formation and off to chow you went. Most Marines were never slow on the uptake and were scarce if in the area on weekends during certain times. Finally, the light bulb turned on and someone came up with the idea of asking why we didn't want to eat at the Chow Hall. What a day! Given permission to bitch about your crappy conditions with theoretically no repercussions. At first, it was the platoon sergeant with an informal bitch session. Bitching completed, he took his results to the platoon commander, who apparently didn't believe the 15-year veteran infantryman. So then, a platoon meeting was called with the platoon commander, first lieutenant in charge. The tone and language definitely changed, but the bitching came fast, furious, and amazingly polite to the LT. He reports this to the captain, who holds a company meeting, rinse and repeat. Still not good enough, Major Buffnuts from battalion has to come down and hear the exact same thing, although much more politely. He has been told 3 times already. After our little chat with Major Buffnuts, the force marching to the chow hall stopped and all was quiet over the weekend. Come Monday morning, the chow hall officer and the senior enlisted chef were mysteriously reassigned, replaced by the next punching bags assigned to lovely Anderson Hall. We were also told that air wing chow halls were off limits to the unwashed grunts. It got a little better, but never good. I would like to think that Major Buffnuts or the Colonel went to Anderson Hall and sampled the wares, but that would be asking too much. Things were definitely edible after the calling, but never air wing good. Someone effed up on several occasions, and I ended up on the Pearl Harbor Navy base and ate like a king comparatively. I think that this is the only time in my military career that bitching about something bad and needing a change actually had a positive impact. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Angry Armadillo 90. It says, prior Marine here as well. I remember once we had to do some training on an Air Force base. They put us up in some of their condemned dorms, and I swear to God, it was one of the nicest rooms I slept in while in. Everyone had their own room, a TV, and an AC unit. They even gave us keys to a truck without any nonsense BS. Just asked us if we wanted one. And yes, their chow hall, I think they called it a cafeteria, was on point. We talked a lot of stuff, but man, looking back on it, the chair force doesn't look too shabby. I can't relate at all to the military side of this one because I never did military service. However, I can relate to when I lived in Saskatchewan. I had a Burger King about a block and a half away from my house. It became my second kitchen. We used to have competitions on who could eat the most Whopper Juniors, and to this day, I really can't stand looking at them anymore. This story comes to us from Knowledge from Work. Make the Aussie go to theater. So this happened 20 plus years ago, and it still makes me laugh hard. I'm an Australian radiographer who was working in the UK NHS. There was this older radiographer, Susie, who told me she hated locum radiographers and particularly hated Australians. Sadly, I was guilty of both. Susie generally tried to make my life hard, but regularly failed to succeed. All of the staff liked me, and I thoroughly enjoyed the work and the people I worked with. Susie also did her best to avoid doing any activity at all. She was disliked by nearly all in radiology, including the supervisor. One Friday afternoon, at a work meeting, the supervisor radiographer informed us all that a new pain clinic service would start Monday in the operating theaters, and as a radiographer, was required to go for 4 to 6 hours each Monday. Now, most radiographers I know are not overjoyed at doing theater work. You stand around in a lead gown for hours, pressing a button occasionally. Some love it, but I think it's okay sometimes. Susie quickly yells out, "I'm definitely not doing that. Make the Aussie go. He is getting paid enough." Everyone stopped and looked at me, and I just said, sure, no drama. Come Monday, I attended theater at 9 a.m. and met the loveliest pain specialist and his nurse. They made the whole day great. Here is the thing, but I would do a case and then pain specialist would say he didn't need me for the next case and I could go to the tea room and wait. I actually spent most of the day in the operating theater tea room, eating biscuits, drinking tea, and reading the newspaper. I would generally come down from theater about 2 p.m., where I would be met by the supervisor radiographer who would tell to take my lunch hour plus my morning tea break. I would return around 3:30 p.m., just in time for my afternoon tea break, then actually do some work from 4 to 5 p.m. Meanwhile, Susie has been assigned to the general X-ray department doing hard work, slogging away all day. This went on for months until I moved on. The last week I was there, the supervisor radiographer sent another radiographer to theater for pain clinic, and it was discovered what my working life on Mondays had entailed. Susie was livid and demanded she should go to pain clinic, but the supervisor reminded her she had previously refused. Was anybody else thinking this story was going to be about something completely different considering the title of Ozzy Goes to Theater? OP, sounds like you've got a pretty sweet job and some really good coworkers there as well. I think every workplace has a Susie, we just like to call them Karens. You should have just rubbed it in though. You should have thanked her in front of everyone for setting you up with that super sweet job. That would have been great. This story comes to us from Al Conan. Want to go ahead of me? Ask nicely. So when I was about a 13-year-old little crap, I went to the supermarket to get myself something to drink. There was only one cash register opened and a queue had formed. I was in the back with one person in front of me and one person in front of them putting their stuff on the counter. Eventually, a second register was opened and the girl said, "Next one in line, step over here please." The person in front of my line was finished packing groceries and was about to pay. The guy in front of me only had a few items, and I only a single can of energy drink. I stepped over to the next register, and this guy steps over behind me and starts instantly flipping his crap about how he was first and I'm stealing his spot. This is an adult man against a 13-year-old. Being the naive 13-year-old I was 90% sure this adult wasn't going to beat up a child. So I told him to calm down, and if he just asks normally, I will let him ahead of me. He doesn't want to, so I refuse to let him go ahead of me and turn around to pay for my single can of energy drink. Cue more raving from Kevin. At this point, some big burly security dude steps over to check out what's happening. So Kevin starts raving at him instead. After he was done, I was asked what was happening, and I told the security guard that the man was indeed ahead of me in the previous line, and if he had just asked nicely, I would have let him go ahead of me. The security guard made the lunatic calm down, and as Kevin growled out the words, "May I go ahead of you?" in a dejected voice, my response was, "Of course, sir, go right ahead." Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called Baby8227. It says, "I absolutely apologize to kids when I get things wrong. It shows them that adults aren't always right, that we too make mistakes, but it's important to own them. Never had a kid not accept my apology, and it warms my heart to hear their little voice say, 'Of course,' when I ask if they accept." So this guy only had one person in front of him who was already paying for their stuff, and they seriously needed to bitch at a 13-year-old kid who only had one item? That tells us a lot about that person. I'm honestly disappointed that the security guard didn't just tell the guy to get the heck out because he was starting a fight with a child. This story comes to us from Heiser Flip. Heiser, you're too excitable and loud. Okay. Involuntary malicious compliance. It was early 2018 and I was a sales rep for a corporate location of one of the big US cellular companies, working in a very busy and very tiny old store. I'm also one of the top sales reps in our district. My job is to sell. I do well at my job by recommending things I'm genuinely enthusiastic about and transferring that enthusiasm to my customers. I did exactly what they wanted. I got to know my customers and found things that they would actually use and love, and they would be my loyal customers and buy my recommendations. We also were required to do as many demos as possible in a day. I was throwing my phone in its OtterBox, pumping up music on the Bluetooth, having a fun time with my customers while transferring their data. 3 times across 3 months, we'd have some senior that literally needed to call customer service and didn't need us sit in our tiny sales floor and make their call. Then get upset that they couldn't hear over the tiny room full of reps and customers actually, buying crap, which is what the sales location is for. My boss kept pulling me aside, telling me things like, "I know you get enthusiastic, but your voice carries and it's a small place. You have to tone it down." By the 3rd time, I just felt defeated. I was depressed. I was walking on eggshells. I was quieter for a week. I had 2 days off in a row. I came back in, and same boss pulls me aside again. "Heiser, remember how I told you to bring it down? I was wrong. It's terrible. You are the engine that brings this team together. It's like you're a ghost. The vibes of the whole place are in the trash now. We need you back. Forget I ever said anything. It was dumb. We need you." I danced my way back onto the sales floor. He started telling the complaining boomers to go home and call if they wanted quiet. We've got a job to do. Only time I've had a boss admit they effed up. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called OddGamer75. It says, "A boss willing to admit a mistake is a rare thing indeed. Nobody's perfect, and being able to recognize that in oneself and correct it is a great quality to have in general. As long as things keep going well, you might want to stay there, even in the face of better offers elsewhere." OP, wonderful that you actually enjoy your job and you work with the customers to get things done. I walk into our local Rogers Communications, which is the mobile provider that we have, and they just don't want to help. We went in there to try and get our two accounts joined together and add on a new line for one of our daughters. The guy basically gave us a bunch of attitude. He didn't want to help us at all unless we were going to buy new phones. Tell me you're on commission without telling me you're on commission, right? It kind of soured my outlook of that company, but I've been with them since I was 18, and that was a very long time ago, and I recognize that he's just a big fish in a little pond, so he can just sit in that store, twiddle his thumbs, and not do any work. This story comes to us from Ghost Alice. Karen says, "Stop cheating to reserve the best parking space in front of the building." A Karen neighbor of mine complained that my roommate and I park in the same parking spot, which is right next to the walkway up to the apartment building. Both of us ride motorcycle, and both motorcycles belong to me, but my roommate rides one to get to work. She accused me of using my second bike to get a de facto reserved parking spot when nobody in the complex has one, and said that what I'm doing is not fair and it's cheating. I said, "Okay, I'll stop parking both of my bikes in one spot." She seemed satisfied with that and left. An hour later, I had all 7 of my motorcycles, 5 of them from inside the garage I rent, but it's halfway across the apartment complex, sitting in front of the apartment building, taking up every prime parking space in front of the walkway to my hall in the building. She went straight to the management to complain. The management came out and knocked on my door. "We can't have you using every parking space." Let me guess, Karen complained? Yes. Yeah, she told me I'm not allowed to have 2 bikes in one parking space to reserve a space. I'm not doing it to reserve a space. Both my roommate and I ride both of the bikes we park in that one space. All the bikes belong to me, but I gave the keys to one of them to my roommate to ride for commuting to work. The other one is my bike for going wherever I need. We park both in one spot to be nice and conserve parking spaces, so other people have somewhere to park. I was just showing Karen what would happen if I'm only allowed 1 bike per parking space. The other 5 bikes are generally in another parking space, in my garage where I keep the bikes that I don't ride frequently. The apartment manager said, "I understand, you made your point and I'll talk to her. Please put the other 5 bikes back in the garage." "No problem," I said. It's been a few weeks, I haven't heard from Karen. Now, OP added an edit on the bottom that's almost the same length as the story. It says, edit, "Since so many people are inventing details not in the story, assuming those details are true, and then getting upset over what they imagined, let me clarify something. This happened at 1 in the afternoon on a day both my roommate and I had off. Most people are away at work during this time. What's more, with the exact topography of the apartment complex, there are only 2 apartments per walkway without going upstairs on my side of the building, but 4 on the other sides because it's up a level and the building is built into a hill. What this means is that most people park on the other side of the building, leaving most of the parking spots in front of my building free and open except for very late at night. How the heck do you think I took up the 7 closest spots with all 7 bikes if the parking lot was full of people trying to park? Think about it for just a second before you assume details that aren't spoken just because you want something to be upset over. Both bikes are away from the apartment complex at the same time for a minimum of 4 hours a day. we didn't engineer the situation where my roommate gets home between 3 to 4 in the afternoon and thus gets first pick of the parking spots. We also could both be driving cars instead of riding bikes. Then, there would be 2 spots taken up instead of 1. I could just choose not to rent a garage and park all 7 out there, forcing people into overflow parking, but I don't. Also, the garage is beyond the overflow parking. It's not fair to expect me to always park in the garage and walk even further because you don't want to park next to my bikes and have all 2 extra feet to walk to reach the concrete walkway to the building. Wow, OP seems like they got pretty triggered by the comments on this one, and to be fair, there's a lot of people making crap up, so I don't really blame them. You know, OP's really doing them a service here by putting both of the bikes in 1 parking spot. I don't really agree with bringing all 7 bikes out, but taking the 2 and putting them in 2 separate spots for like a week to let Karen know how that feels, that would be perfectly fine. Did you know every Karma Stories video is also produced in podcast form? You can search for Karma Stories on every major podcasting platform. I thank you for watching and listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.